Hey, everybody. We're going to be talking about recruiting in the military. We're going to be talking about women in combat roles. And we're going to be taking a look at a CNN piece that laments the fact that a woman who is not a Navy SEAL was not given command of the Navy SEALs. And I've got a screenshot of it here. CNN exclusive. She was the best man for the job. Excess policies are pushing qualified women out of the military. Now, I have to point out that this article was written by somebody who had never served in the military. Her name is Haley Britz, and she writes for CNN, covers military affairs and the Pentagon and that sort of thing. She is coming at this with a very left leaning agenda. She says everything was set for the Navy officer to take over a new role that would have capped an already distinguished career and made her the first woman in Naval Special Warfare Command overseeing Navy SEALs. Ranked the top officer for promotion in her cohort, she received a Purple Heart after being injured in an IED attack during a combat tour in Iraq. She then became the first woman to serve with SEAL Team 6 in the role of troop commander, one of several senior positions within the squadrons that make up the elite naval unit. Okay, let's go back and talk about this. First of all, the fact that she was ranked the top officer for promotion in her cohort tells us more about the people doing the selecting than it does about the qualifications of the people being selected. We know for a fact that starting in the Obama administration and all the way up until the new Trump administration, the military was refocused during that time period, not on lethality, not on winning wars, but on political correctness, on equity. Equity means everybody gets an equal outcome, no matter where they start from. So you could not get promoted in the U.S. military above the rank of about captain if you did not kiss the woke ring. This was part and parcel of being an officer in the U.S. military. You had to be all in on white fragility and DEI. So the fact that she was considered the top officer for promotion in her cohort likely tells us that the people who were making that determination were looking at, number one, her gender, because they wanted a woman to be leading Naval Special Warfare Command. Now, I can tell you one thing for certain that we know for sure, and that is that this woman never went to BUD/S and never graduated as a Navy SEAL. So although she had been put into command positions within the Navy SEALs, even within the most elite Navy SEAL unit, SEAL Team 6. So you tell me, how much sense does it make to take somebody who has never been a police officer and make them the police chief of even a small town? How much sense does it make to take a woman who is not a qualified Navy SEAL and put her in charge of all of the qualified Navy SEALs? I'm not saying a thing about her plumbing. I could care less about her gender. What I'm more concerned about is the fact that she is supposed to have been put into a leadership position, leading people who she can't relate to a great extent because she has not been through the same things herself. But that's not the way this is written. She goes on in the article to say she received a Purple Heart after being injured in an IED attack. Okay, having bled for this country, I can tell you that, okay, that's a noble thing. Fighting and bleeding for your country is a noble thing, but it doesn't take any special skill. It doesn't take any special leadership ability to get injured in an IED attack. It just takes being unlucky, being in the wrong place at the wrong time. If she was highly decorated because she was in an IED attack and then she charged enemy positions and cleared trench lines and so on and so forth, that would have been written into this article, but it's not. So by the very fact that it's not written into this article, we know that she's likely not highly decorated. We're talking about decorations for valor in combat, Bronze Star, Silver Star, anything like that. Now, they have not released the name of this woman, so we don't know exactly who she is. But the article goes on to lament the fact that she had been put in line to take over the Navy SEALs. She was going to be the commander. But just 2 weeks before the ceremony, the command abruptly canceled this ceremony with very little explanation. But if she really had something to offer and the military wanted her, they would allow her to stay in. They'd put her in a different billet. Now, the one thing that she gives a nod to here is that the Navy SEALs is a brotherhood. Putting her in charge of the Navy SEALs is very little different than putting me in charge of the Navy SEALs. And I'll tell you right now, I'm not qualified to lead the Navy SEALs. I never went through BUDS, and I wouldn't dare. Pete Hegseth has said he is not closing combat arms to women. All he's doing is he's saying that we're going to have one standard, the standard of combat, because combat doesn't differentiate. Combat doesn't care what's between your legs. They only care what you can do, what you can accomplish on the battlefield. And the men and maybe women you go to war with need to know that you are capable and competent to do the job that you're supposed to do and potentially be there to drag their carcass off the battlefield if they get injured. After Barack Obama tried to basically shift the military into being a social experiment more than a warfighting force, they had a tremendous amount of difficulty recruiting new talent and maintaining good talent that they had already. Readiness suffered greatly. As a matter of fact, the crisis that we got into kind of came to a head in 2022 and 2023 into 2024, where the active duty military recruiting goal was missed by 25%, meaning the armed services missed their goals by about 41,000 recruits in 2023. That's the fiscal year. 41,000 short. Applicants hit a 40-year low because of this. And you could point to that and say that's another reason why they're feeling like they have to take this small minority of soldiers, sailors, airmen, guardsmen, and Marines, which are women. They make up about 17% of the military force that we have today. And they're just not getting the people, and the people are hemorrhaging. They're leaving as fast as they can. And so we're going to take women and put them in these positions that might have gone to a more qualified man, but the more qualified man bailed. He popped smoke. He got out of the military completely. What I'm saying is if 17% of the soldiers that we have in the Army are women, and you look at the number of flag officers that get promoted into those slots in the Army, and the number of women getting promoted is 38% or something, double what the actual percentage is. What that would prove is that they were promoting women specifically because they were women. And just from all of the anecdotal evidence that I've heard talking to people in the military, that was absolutely the case. That women were getting promoted to these positions, and minorities, all this intersectionality. If you're a black lesbian woman, boy, you're making 4-star general, that kind of thing. I served for 8 years in the U.S. military, 4 years as a U.S. Army Ranger in that elite 75th Ranger Regiment, and 4 years flying helicopters in the National Guard. As a part of my job with the 75th Ranger Regiment, every year the regiment sends a cadre of instructors, of Rangers, up to West Point Military Academy, the United States Military Academy in West Point, New York, to train their first-year students. As an instructor there, I got a new squad of cadets every week, and we just took them through basic infantry tactics, movement to contact, land navigation, raids, ambushes, recons, stuff like that. So we spent the whole week out in the woods with these people. It was a week-long field problem. There were no showers. There were no latrines, no toilets. The standard operating procedure at that time, I'm not sure how they've changed it now with women in these units, but at that time, when you take a platoon out on a patrol, an extended patrol that's going to be multi-day, when it comes nighttime, you form a triangle with first, second, and third squad, and then your weapons squad, which has machine guns, would anchor each corner of the triangle. So you have a machine gun on each corner, and then you have one of the 3 squads in between to form that triangle. Everybody just lays down on the ground and faces outward. You're almost touching the feet of the guy that is facing the other way behind you. And you buddy up in pairs and basically lay there, and you pull security with your weapon, and you lay there all night long. You don't get in a sleeping bag. You take turns changing your socks. You take turns sleeping. One man's awake, one man's asleep, and you wait for daylight to come before you continue your mission. So you can imagine a situation like that. If you have to defecate, where are you going to do that? It's not like when you're camping where you hike off to a stand of trees somewhere and you hide behind a tree and you do your business and bury it in a hole or something like that. That's not how that works. If you have to defecate, you can't leave the patrol base. They dig a slit trench right in the center of the patrol base, and you walk over there and drop your trousers and do your business right there in full view of everybody, because any other way would not be tactically sound. I have been on field problems with the Rangers where we did not have a shower for more than 30 days. In actual infantry units, you'll go out to the field and stay for a month. Now, if you're in a rear echelon unit, like a medical unit, you've got tents, you've got toilets, you've got showers, you've got a mess tent, that kind of stuff. We didn't have anything like that. So when I got these squads of cadets at West Point, I would sit them down and have a little briefing with them at the beginning. And I would say, how many of you believe that women should be allowed to serve in combat units? And all the women would raise their hands for sure. So these are the cream of the crop. These women are the best of the best. I said, okay, now I'm going to do you a favor this week, and I'm going to treat you exactly like I treat everybody else. I'm not going to give you any special privileges. You're going to do exactly what you would do that I would make you do if you were a man. And they all said, great, that's what we want. And to their credit, they tried really hard not to get any special treatment. The command at West Point came to us and said, you can't treat these women the same as you treat the men. They said, look, we will bring out porta potties for the women. The men will use the slit trench like normal, but we'll bring out porta potties that the women can use. So we had to basically declare an admin break to our field problem and let the women get up in the morning and go off over behind some trees to the porta potties and get all cleaned up and then come back, and then we'd go tactical again. It's obvious that even if these women are 100% capable and can qualify to do anything the males can do, it's still going to be a problem because of the sexual politics, because of the additional logistical considerations that have to be taken into account. Separate showers, separate billets, gynecological services. The medics have to carry medicines and things that they don't have to carry if it's an all-male unit. So it just adds to the logistical burden. So that creates some institutional friction on those things. So in 2015, Barack Obama, his last year in office, did away with the restriction on combat arms units for women. Let me make this very, very clear to you. I am not against having women in the military. There are many jobs in the military that women do every bit as good as the men and even better. Medical stuff, even pilots or crews on aircraft, that sort of thing. Combat arms units are units that may at some point find themselves engaged in hand-to-hand combat with the enemy. Those units were off limits to females until 2015. When Barack Obama did away with that, they immediately started pushing women into these units. Today, there are about 4,000 women who are serving in combat units in the U.S. military. And that's a minute fraction of the total number of people in those units. So the aggregate logistical friction it brings to these units is hugely way out of proportion to the benefit that you might get from having a woman in an infantry unit. In real life, if there were artillery shells coming in, probably not everybody is going to be able to carry themselves 200 meters out of the kill zone, because there are going to be some people that are injured or killed, and we can't leave those people behind. So if somebody's injured, you have to pick them up, throw them over your shoulder, and run 200 meters with them. I never had even one of them who could complete that task by herself. And again, these are not the bottom of the barrel. These are the best, fittest, most competent females that the military has. And I literally couldn't find one who could pick up normal sized man with his body armor and his gear and run 200 yards with him. Not one. And so what that exposes is that there is a liability in having women as a part of these units. Women that are capable of doing something like that are very few and far between. And so you have to ask yourself, is it worth all of the logistical friction that you end up with by having women in there? Is it worth having the sexual politics, having the drama? Is it worth it for the two or three females that could actually make it using the same standards as men? Now, in 2015, they didn't make women adhere to the same standards. Only the Marine Corps said they were going to do that. And so the Marine Corps had a study done by the Rand Corporation on women in special operations and in the Marines. And what they found was that if the standards remained the same as they had been before 2015, and the women were held to the same male standard, none of the women could complete the crucible in the Marine Corps crucible. None. The long and the short of this study is what I've been saying throughout this piece, is that challenges of putting women into a mixed gender unit are they get constantly compared to all male units, and they make some soldiers feel like if we got women in our unit, then our unit's just second rate. We got a bunch of women that are trying to be infantrymen here. I want to go to a elite unit that doesn't allow women. I would have been that guy for sure. The women, they found, tend to get injured and even tend to get post-traumatic stress at a much higher rate than the men do, all other things being equal. So they get more stress fractures in their hips and their joints. And it just makes sense. You get a 150-pound woman, that'd be a big woman, and you get a 210-pound man. They both have to pick up an 80-pound rucksack and carry it for 12 miles. The woman is obviously going to be at much more risk for injuries. And so that's what they found. This RAND study found that the benefits of bringing women into units like this were far outweighed by the drawbacks. But the Obama administration said, we're going to do it anyway. And they desperately wanted to have women in special forces and special operations. So they started sending women to Ranger School. When this happened, anybody who's been to Ranger School was just disgusted at it, right? I went through Ranger School in class 3-89. When I went through, it was 61 days, and you got an average of 2 hours sleep a night, and you got one meal per day for 2 months solid. You're walking a good 10, 12 miles a day with a minimum 40-pound rucksack, and you only do it on one meal a day. So they take away your food, they take away your sleep, and they grade you on absolutely everything you do. About 70% of those who start Ranger School end up recycling at some point. What they found as they started putting women into Ranger School was that they were getting recycled at a much higher rate, about 90%. That says something. They had a much higher rate of injuries. They had a much higher dropout rate in terms of percentages. It took me literally years to recover physically from Ranger School. It's not meant to build you up. It's meant to wear you down and to make you more exhausted than you ever knew you could possibly be, and then make you lead people in that situation. Now, this woman was given 6 months off before she went to Ranger School, given a professional physical trainer and a nutritionist to get her into Olympic CrossFit Games shape before she went to Ranger School. That in and of itself should have disqualified her from getting a Ranger tab, because nobody else gets that. Nobody else gets 6 months off. Nobody else gets a fitness trainer to get you in the best shape of your life before you go to Ranger School. There have been to date about 150 women who have graduated from Ranger School. Virtually all of them have been given months of time to prepare before they are sent. And the percentage of women who have tried to go to Ranger School and have dropped out is much higher than 70%. So combat doesn't get easier for you if you're a woman. If anything, it gets harder. It's harder psychologically on women because women are nurturing by nature. Nothing that I've told you so far even touches the moral component that says, what kind of a country are we if we have plenty of military age males who could go off and defend our country, and do the bloody, dirty work of giving their lives, like Iwo Jima and Tarawa and Guadalcanal and the Bella Wood and all those places. That was all accomplished by men. So if it's not absolutely necessary, there's a moral component to this. Why would we send our women off to fight for our men and not the other way around? Now, I understand in a place like Israel or Ukraine, where they're under an existential threat and they don't have enough men. Women tend to get killed at a higher rate in actual combat than men do as well. They can't move as fast. They certainly, if they get into hand-to-hand combat with a male enemy soldier, she's more likely to die in that engagement. And so it's unfortunate when other countries feel the need to draft women into their militaries. As I said, I don't have a problem with women being in the military. There are plenty of jobs they could do. Combat cameraman, maybe. Be a journalist, be a medic, something like that, as long as it does not involve you going into combat.